Hi, welcome to another edition of Simply Stated from my car, because that's where I have to do my show these days. Unfortunately, I was trying to do my show indoors somewhere else and had to deal with too many interruptions. So, it's, frankly, it's just sad. It's sad that people have to be so hostile because the show doesn't support Russian and Chinese activity in the U.S., right? Because that's what it is. And then, how many other people or, journalists in the U.S. are actually going to give you an authentic, legitimate telling of what's going on? As far as what's basically terrorism in the U.S., we no longer call it that because there's too many dorks out there trying to make money off of it, right? Like, the Department of Justice just got through a successful suit against Booz Allen Hamilton for that. And they've got away with it since the 80s. They took over part of the CIA. They've trafficked children. It's a Russian and Chinese company. This morning, the song I'm playing is by Pussycat, and it's called Rose. And I think it's a really important song to think of when you consider, what the effect of the Russian KGB, FSB culture has been on the U.S. and the Chinese CCP, because they're the ones that started road rage and car accidents, and that was actually a basic form of terrorism. And everyone went, we have to rethink all this. When I was living in the DC area in the 2000s, who cared? Calling it a terrorist attack all the time just meant more dork people, dork defense contractors who didn't want to solve problems and just want to make money, running into situations, creating conflicts in the Middle East, what people call just warmongering to make money, as opposed to actually protecting U.S. citizens and U.S. territories themselves, right? So today's show is actually going to flip around then and show you something that you may not have thought of, and I'm going to finish talking about the story of Nicole Scherzinger. She was the lead singer of the Pussycat Dolls. Also, I always want to do shows that support breast cancer awareness and support fighting it, and I'm somebody who's survived it myself. I was diagnosed with pre-cancer and had to get treatment, unfortunately, at one point in my life, and I'm going to keep beating it, but, I have to live my life a certain way in order to keep cancer-free. Which is another type of terrorism that's out there. Unfortunately, my concerns and threat of it to me were brought on me by dealing with the FSB itself, and the couple I told you about called Sarah and Wilhelm, who went on to then found Silver Lake, which funds Endeavor, which is essentially the Russian KGB, called the FSB of Russia, operations in the U.S. today. I know it's really hard to stomach sometimes, that's why I make this series and put everything together that way. But I'm going to go through some current events and what's been going on. But we're going to start with going back to the story of Nicole Scherzinger of Pussycat Dolls. I graduated from Luther College in 2002. In 2003, by then I had met the woman you know as Nicole Scherzinger. And it's actually he. That time I got involved with another man who was by the name David Happy, as an actual person. And he ended up actually getting me raped. We dated for a short time. He claimed to be of Syrian ancestry. I thought maybe he was like my father's people. He wasn't. He got investigated. I have no idea what happened to him. In the end, I don't even care. But it's important to understand that he was just another person involved in sending people to be trafficked in the United States. And he worked for Senator John Kerry even during the time that John Kerry would have been running against George W. Bush. So, when I say Senator John Kerry didn't really have a platform to stand on to say that he was this fine, upstanding man, he wasn't. He was as much involved in those kinds of behaviors as anyone else. And frankly, in the 2000s, the DC area was one of the most dangerous places you could live if you're an attractive woman such as myself, or anyone else who was even relatively attractive. But what I'm going to tell you about as far as the Thai consulate having problems with her is that she went by the name Aisha Jalil. And that's her other name. She actually has an apartment in New York City as well, or has. And she then has also been starring in a production, supposedly in London in the West End, Sunset Boulevard, and Katy Perry went over there recently. I talked with Katy Perry's people are doing this. I said it's been really dangerous because you're going to end up getting attacked afterwards. You're going to go through a pulse attack. She's a special kind of attack she does on people. I'm talking about Nicole Scherzinger, who also goes with the name Aisha Jalil. Aisha, and the last name is Jalil, Jaleel. And she's a murder rapist and a thief. When I first went to the DC area, I didn't know that she had contact with Sarah and Wilhelm or some of these other people. I didn't know she was involved with Endeavor. Or Kendrick, right? And I nicknamed Kendrick. That's not his actual name. It's not to be confused with Kendrick Lamar. And what I want you to understand is that, I went through this weird thing with this guy, Dave, that, messed around with me and dumped me. We had this weird incident, where Like, Wilhelm had told me I couldn't go out with him anymore. They knew he was cheating on me. I didn't realize the three of them had contact with each other. Like, seriously, Wilhelm and Dave, I know they're all talking to each other. And I was just extremely hurt by the relationship because I had actually liked him and didn't realize he was just setting me up to be raped or trafficked. And so we went through this bizarre breakup. There were some people from Hastert's office around. He was friends with the Hastert people who were really corrupt. Denny Hastert, the former Speaker of the House, who was a known pervert, child pervert, rapist, went to prison. And I ended up being raped. It was in 2003. And bizarrely, he and I went through this thing where he showed up and made this big scene and made me feel bad and talked down to me about how he was, we weren't together and tried to act like it was my fault when he'd pretty clearly been cheating on me and dumped me. And then, another person who you actually know as RuPaul was there and said, stop talking to him and stop talking to this other woman from the Hastert office. They're crazy. The next thing you know, Aisha shows up. I end up getting drugged and blacked out. And later I wake up, and my other friend, who I'm just going to call RuPaul because he actually performs as RuPaul, we're in downtown DC, and there were all these pulse attacks going through, and Aisha was actually right around in the streets of DC. That's Nicole Scherzinger, screaming and talking about how she loves pulse attacks. And it was like all these car accidents, and it just looked completely insane. It scared the whole city. And turned out that she started screaming and talking about how she loved them, loved pulse attacks, and exposed her boobs and then her penis in public. And at that point, RuPaul went and grabbed her and pulled her out of the seat and pulled her back into the car. And then I woke up sometime later, I guess it was supposed to be an apartment, and couldn't figure out how to get into it. And at that point, RuPaul and I were both really afraid of Aisha, we also call her Nicole, and I ended up telling him just to leave, and I ended up trying to get the apartment on my own. I ended up getting raped again that night. I survived, ended up reporting it all to the Arlington police, who never solved the case, and instead just decided to attack my friend, who we'll call just RuPaul, and because he was black. And I ended up having to not only face down the police and their racism and the ridiculousness of this, but that the Arlington police themselves were corrupt, which everyone knows. And it took until 2020 to get the sheriff of the police department fired. So it took like 17 years to begin to clean out the police department of dumb Russian assets and people who were involved in the KGB, FSB of Russia, right there around the Pentagon. And you wonder how the Pentagon got hit? In a plane attack in 2001 with that many corrupt police officers there, that many corrupt people in the area, under George W. Bush. I'm not even going to try to say it was George W. Bush's fault. George W. Bush is involved in a cult group that, frankly, he was in AA, and unfortunately AA is full of terrorists and people who take advantage of those with addiction. So there's nothing else to be said about it. I've never seen anything more horrific than the DC area in those days. But what I want to get across to you is that there was another woman who worked in the DC government, I think, and she had been in the federal government. She was a Bush employee named Sarah Bonner. That's the actual name. And it turned out that she was actually dating Aisha. And the two of them were being really nasty to me. And Sarah was pretending to date a guy by the name of Brian, who eventually ended up getting himself a job at the NTSB, the National Transportation Safety Board. And he was the one that said to me, he said, Sarah and I are going to break up. She's obviously, she kept accusing him of wanting to be with me or other women and screaming at me and other women and just beating up at everyone. She said, I told you not to talk to him, not to touch him. The whole time she's dating Aisha, who's actually Nicole Scherzinger. So, and Brian used to joke around to me, he said, do you think the devil is a skinny Indian woman with big boobs? And finally I said, no, I think it's a really skinny Indian man with big boobs who likes to blow up DC and the Pentagon. And he started screaming because he finally got it. And the point about all this is that it doesn't really matter what you identify as, it's how you behave. If you're going to run around and commit terrorist attacks and blow up buildings and want to scream about how you want to put in pulse attacks and expose your genitalia, you're not a good person. Your rights and your civil rights end where other people's lives and bodies begin. Back up. I can't believe some of the stuff people have been trying to go through in the news. And, it's important because MI6 actually doesn't like Nicole Scherzinger, neither does the Thai consulate. So what she's doing free today, who even knows, other than the fact that she may have played this whole, little innocent female thing to the max. She's not. She's a man. And I want you to understand that she really likes blowing stuff up. And Katy Perry went and took some photos of her recently and footage of her with blood on her face and ran it. The footage went all over the world. And then Katy Perry went through a recent bizarre attack with a little weird, pulse attack coming through. And, it could have, I don't know if she was injured, but I know that it was enough to disturb herself and there were people filming. And it was a message from Aisha, otherwise known as Nicole Scherzinger, directly. Okay? And I ended up dumping Aisha as a friend because she got me raped. And she actually had to call me, like Sarah Bonner set up for her to call me, and I just said, well, I think you really need to get treatment and think about who you are as a person. And she kept crying and saying she didn't want everyone talking about her, and I said, well, I think you just really need to get treatment. And she had told me that she was planning to head up the Pussycat dolls, and I said, great, I don't even know what that is. And all these people later got mad at me about it, sure, they were just tied to Endeavor. It's like, well, why would I care about a group that I was never up for in the first place? Because I'd never been told that I didn't have any Russian ancestry, so I couldn't head it. Why would I care about that? Why wouldn't I just be focused on what I was focusing on, which was making a living and making money, which is all I still care about today. And I don't have time for people who want to tell me I'm supposed to care about something else. People, you're not supposed to care about anything but your own welfare and safety. You can't take care of the rest of the world. There's too many of them lie about it and, set up fake funds and slush funds and then party with it and just lie and, they blow up a building and claim they're needy, and it's ridiculous. You have to focus on your own employment life. You can't give $5 to every weirdo who says they need $5 to hold on to, okay? And I want to make it really, really clear that, she used her ties with the Bush administration to leave the DC or leave and then set up residency in England. Like, that's horrible. The English have to put up with her. But that's why the Thai consulate doesn't like her. Even the Indian guys in Intel and the DCR said, this woman is not Indian or even Thai. Like, what is she? She's pretty clearly Russian. She might also be part Thai or part Indian, but she's definitely got Russian ancestry. That's why she was given the role of PCD. And if you're wondering, as far as singing, her singing voice comes from a woman that I know from Luther College who has a very beautiful voice, but does not look like a dancer at all, but she has an incredibly beautiful voice. And probably one of the most beautiful voices I've ever heard. But so the point is that Nicole Scherzinger doesn't sing or dance. She's using DAC technology, just like J-Lo does, Taylor Swift, Beyonce. There's a long list of these so-called female performers that don't actually sing or dance. They're using somebody else's body for performances, or they're using, it's all CGI, and it's all DAC technology, and it's a joke. It's a joke. It's an offensive joke, and it's meant to be an offensive joke, and don't forget it. And, I'm looking at this, the woman who was forced to provide Nicole's voice was very severely beaten and tortured by both Buffalo Bill and then Wilhelm. And I don't, putting a stop to her behavior has been really difficult, but the fact that I know there's like one other person, she's living in Michigan today, that went through that, it's kind of scary to think somebody else went through what I went through. I unfortunately did a lot of the track laying for the other major singer in the group, and then also did a lot of the choreography, and I was all by force. It's all trafficking. But we put an end to it finally here in the U.S., and the rule now is the U.S. military came forward and said it doesn't matter who's president, it's never okay for anyone to say that you have to go out and be trafficked. And what I'm most concerned about with the new administration is that, Buffalo Bill or some of these other weird guys do after trafficking people and claiming it's an intel operation, and it's really not. You're just stealing from an innocent U.S. citizen and making it so they can't have employment. And it took years to put an end to the behaviors with Cersei and Wilhelm and get them out of my life. And I think the joke about Nicole Scherzinger was like feeling stabby is the meme, right? Because that's her personality. And I look at modern events. We've had a number of fires recently. We've had a number of train accidents all over the place. It's all very obviously Endeavor. As far as the situation in Los Angeles and North Carolina, those are obviously all terrorist attacks put together by Endeavor. We're not going to call them that because in the context of dealing with problems, you have to look at where your systems failed. Like, how were you not, competent to fend off the attack? It isn't worth your time to say, let's do a press conference about how we've got to defeat the evil whatever. Because Endeavor very clearly worked on creating ISIS. The Russian FSB did. And follows it. And when you're dealing with a nasty cult group that's around the world, you have to begin to think that it's global, it's transnational crime. But in the end, it really is about, do your systems work to keep people secure? Do your train systems work to keep people secure? The attack, unfortunately, I'm going to tell you the truth about this thing with the black helicopter on the Pentagon. That was obviously an attack on the helicopter that defended that. Okay, they took that plane down. You need to understand something that American Airlines, Wilhelm told me back in the 90s that American Airlines was the one airline that the FSB could use to commit attacks. They could set up jihadists to go attack the U.S., they could attack other countries using American Airlines. That's what this was again. It was the same thing with American Airlines. And unfortunately, the helicopter was on a continuance of what is it, continuity of governance mission, protecting the area. And unfortunately, a lot of the people on that flight turned out to have been from a part of Missouri that has a lot of Russian operatives. As far as what's going on with the Olympics, I've already explained to you that Buffalo Bill put a number of people into the more narcissistic performance, gymnastics, ice skating. Anything that looks really pretty and appeals to narcissists is exactly where he's going to put his people. Okay, and so you can do your press conferences and events and talk about the loss for the ice skating community. If you've noticed, the rest of us are not going to say too much about it. As far as what happened in Philadelphia, I have to commend their mayor because, you know, look, their mayor, Sharon Parker, already came out right away. And so the reason I devoted time to not putting in a show right away is I wanted to let the actual government of the U.S. and the different areas, you know, cities, states, counties, federal government, whomever, put together their time and, like, make their statements on these issues. But it's pretty obvious that that was another terrorist attack, and unfortunately, you know, Philadelphia got hit. And I hate to tie it to the fact that the Philadelphia Eagles were going up against the Kansas City Chiefs, but it seems to be fairly likely, and the city took it on and handled it really well. As the official said, no donations are needed. They don't want, you know, nobody wants to deal with Endeavor or these other weird dork groups setting up fake funds where the money doesn't even go to the victims. Nobody wants weird chlamydia-covered, you know, poisoned food from Endeavor sent to them, which is what's been going on. Nobody wants real trashy, gross stuff. You know, they're going through recovering from a crash. There were some failures in their systems that they have to address, and they did the best they could with it, and they're handling it really, really well, and I have to commend her and her behavior in handling it. I also want to thank the Philadelphia Eagles for their performance last night. I think the best thing, you know, sometimes the U.S. can do as a country is to come together. The president went to the games, and he was going to support the Kansas City Chiefs, made fun of Taylor Swift. Taylor Swift had to deal with being booed. Someday, maybe we'll actually put Taylor Swift on trial for the amount of labor trafficking and theft she's committed in this country. Because she's a horrible person, clearly part of the czars of Russia, and what's called a communist thug, and doesn't belong here. Maybe someday we'll get to the point where we don't just make fun of her at our Super Bowl and watch as her team gets beaten. You know, her weird commie team gets beaten. It's run by people who support labor trafficking and pedophilia, but maybe we'll actually get to the point where we are strong enough as a country to put her in trial. You know, J-Lo, Beyonce, Taylor Swift. None of these people are celebrities. They're not artists. They're not musicians. They're clearly here to represent a foreign culture that is hostile to the rest of us mankind. By the way, today, hey J-Lo, I got something for you. Here's the old necklace you gave me, the weird shitty necklace that has like brown poop on it, and you said was supposed to represent my mom, and it's just really ugly and it's nothing like her. Looks really Russian. Yeah, I'm gonna throw it out. And then I'm gonna take these boots here that were actually provided to me at a really low cost by one of the dumb Russian dork men. Buffalo Bill had them. I didn't know this, but he had them set up for me. So I'm gonna go ahead and throw those out. Yeah, you know, people, the point is you can't always just sage your house and clean things out. Sometimes you have to throw out the dumb crap that is attractive. They call it attracting bad energy. It's actually being used to track you or has bad radio signals on, so we're going to throw it out now. That's today's show. Bye. Say bye-bye trashy stuff. Bye-bye trash. Bye-bye trash. Oh, okay. And that is another edition of Simply Stated. So, trashy boots that were accidentally given to me or purposely given to me by Buffalo Bill, maybe used to track me, are gone. Trashy necklace from J-Lo, who used to go by the name Blocker Krishak at Luther College, is gone. Bye-bye trash. Bye-bye. Bye. Have a good one.